What is the circadian rhythm? The circadian rhythm is the physical, behavioral, and mental processes that an organism experiences on a 24-hour cycle. By organism, that doesn't just mean human beings, that also includes animals and plants. Have you ever noticed how animals, while they don't know what time it is, they always know what time it is? And similar to plants, some of those are even on annual or semi-annual cycles, but even day to day. Prime example, I have this plant, and one day I noticed he was super open, and I was afraid. Yes, a he. I give my plants genders, but I was afraid that he was outgrowing the space he was in because his leaves were so spread out. So I moved him, and then the next day I noticed that he was closed. So I was like, I think he's opening and closing. I don't know why he's doing that, but that's why he's doing it. So they're also on their own cycle. Now, light and dark play the biggest factor with the circadian rhythm. So going back to the plant example, maybe it was the time of day, the lighting that was causing him to open and close. But other things also have an effect on the circadian rhythm, like your food intake, your stress levels, your environment, the temperature. And again, this could also apply to the plants. Maybe where I had him before, he opened because of the temperature of that area. But then when I moved him, maybe it was cooler over there or warmer. I don't know. So he decided to close. Regardless, whether you're a human, a plant, or an animal, or any other kind of micro species, you adapt to a circadian rhythm. So you may be thinking, okay, cool story, bro, but like, why are we talking about this? Well, if we take a look at a couple of charts, we will see that our body processes are actually aligned with the circadian rhythm. So things like when you're the most alert, when you have the highest level of muscular capacity or cardiovascular endurance, when melatonin is released, when melatonin stops being released. All of these processes are aligned with the light and the dark, which is the circadian rhythm, even down to the hormones. When cortisol is active, when testosterone is active, when leptin is active, when insulin is active. So all of these things that are functions that go on within our body are also aligned with the circadian rhythm. Light is released into your body. The cells are receiving that light, and then your cells go on to do the process they need to do. Similar to when your body notices that it's getting dark, those cells react to the dark and they start the processes that they need to start. So our bodies are heavily aligned with this process. And that's why it's important, because when you're thinking about your health, imagine if all of these processes were off. Imagine that you weren't aligned with your circadian rhythm. Your whole system will be out of whack. This could affect your metabolism, which could then affect your body weight, which could then affect your blood sugar and your cholesterol. So you could actually have health problems by not being aligned with this system. Let's take the hormone leptin, for example. So this hormone is meant to suppress appetite. It is at its highest activity level in the nighttime. So when you are sleeping, this is when this hormone is active. So imagine that you weren't sleeping. Imagine instead you were awake all night. This hormone would not activate, which then goes to say that you will be up all night and continuing to eat, because the hormone that is meant to suppress your appetite is not active in suppressing your appetite. So prime example, night shift workers, so not everyone can be a 9 to 5 work in the daytime. Like we have nighttime workers, we have those shift workers, we have the graveyard shift. These people, their system is all the way backwards because they are asleep during the day and they are awake at night. So a lot of these processes for them are already out of whack. This is also why, sad to say, but a lot of people working the night shift have the highest level of health risk. They call it the graveyard shift for a reason, because you're kind of putting yourself one step in the grave. And this isn't meant to scare you, because giving you this information, you can always work with the circadian rhythm to combat these issues. So before I get into night shift workers, let's just talk about how you can work with this system on a normal basis. How can you use the circadian rhythm to your most effective pinpoint? So for example, melatonin starts to suppress, so stop being released around 7 a.m. And then you get that high alertness around 10 a.m. So if you already know that your body is going to be at its highest alert at 10 a.m., that could be a time for you to do some of your most important tasks, because you know that you're going to be the most effective, have the most reactive time, response time at 10 a.m. So this could be your high performance hour. And then you continue on to the clock when we get to the part where you have the highest level of cardiovascular endurance and the highest level of muscular strength. That could be a time to do your workout, because you're going to get the most effective time during that hour. So when you're looking at this chart of the circadian rhythm and you're seeing what processes are the highest, which are the lowest, you can kind of plan your life around those systems. But again, not everyone can attain to this. We have moved into modern life. We're not cave people anymore where we're just doing what we feel right based on the sunlight. Like we have to be at work at a certain time. Maybe we can't work out at 5 p.m. when our cardiovascular muscular endurance activity level is the highest. Maybe we can't do that most important task at 10 a.m. because we got to do something else at 10 a.m. So we're in a society now where we can't necessarily follow it to the T. And this is where we can figure out ways that we can kind of work with the system instead of allowing it to work against us. The good news is we are human beings. Our bodies are meant to adapt. Think about jet lag. So whenever you're going on a trip somewhere where you're going back in time or you're going forward in time, at least for me, it doesn't take your body that long to adapt to the system because, again, it's going off of that sunlight in that dark time. So even if you just left somewhere and it was, let's say, 6 o'clock p.m., and then you're going back in time, so it's like 4 p.m., have you ever noticed that come around, like, what's your usual bedtime? So by 8 p.m., normally maybe you're getting sleepy, but here you are, it's now 6 p.m. again, and you just feel still energetic. You don't get sleepy until it's 8 p.m., the time that you are now, because your body is adapting. It's like, oh, well, it's still bright outside, so it must not be time for us to go to bed. So your body will adapt to the system. So let's say you're not a nighttime worker and you have this ability to follow the circadian rhythm, yet it's off anyway, because maybe you have insomnia, you don't sleep well at night, or you have whatever the case may be that's not allowing you to follow this system properly. There are things you can do to repair your circadian rhythm and get back on track. One thing is trying to have a set sleep time and a set awake time, even on the weekend. So try to get yourself into that flow of when I'm going to bed and when I'm waking up. In order to do this, you want to cut off caffeine, preferably probably like afternoon. Like maybe noon can be your last time to have coffee, and then you just allow that to ride the rest of the day. But you want to cut off caffeine before bed. And you also want to cut off blue light, because blue light is that emission of awakeness. Instead, try some red light. So for one, that would mean turning off cellular devices. So you don't want to go to sleep with the TV on. You don't want to be scrolling on Instagram, Facebook, or looking at YouTube videos right before bed. You want to go to bed. So maybe 30 minutes before you're ready to go to sleep, cut off all devices and just read a book or do something else to entertain yourself before you fall asleep. But also red light therapy could be a good thing. So maybe you put in some type of red emission light to help you go to sleep if you find that falling asleep at night is not easy for you. And then have that set wake time. You can allow the sun to wake you up naturally. You can set an alarm, whatever you need to do, but just try to consistently wake up at the same time every day. You also want to move, so you want to exercise. Preferably if you can at those times when your body is already more high alert or have fastest reaction times when you have that energy in your system. And you want to get sunlight preferably earlier in the day, because again, that's going to signal to your body to start those processes that respond to daylight. And if you must take a nap, keep them short and earlier in the day. And by short, I mean less than 30 minutes. This is a whole other video, but if you look at the sleep cycle in the REM stages, so REM stages of sleep, usually after somewhere between 20 to 40 minutes, after that 40-minute mark, your body starts to enter a new stage of REM, which is going into that deep sleep. And at that moment, if you are awakened, you actually tend to be more groggy than you were before you fall asleep, because you got interrupted into that deep sleep stage. So you don't want to get into that stage. So when you're taking naps, you want to keep them shorter than the 40 minutes, preferably 30 minutes or shorter, so your body doesn't fall into that deep sleep stage and cause you to be groggy later on, which could then affect your sleep later in the day. So if you're going to take naps, keep them short and make them earlier in the day. So these are just some things you can do to try to get your body back onto that natural circadian rhythm cycle. Now, if you are a shift worker, a nighttime worker, it's not the end all be all. There are some things you can do to try to keep your body in a good system as well. Because again, our bodies do adapt. So once you get into a certain sleep cycle for so long, your body will begin to adapt to what your new life is. However, there still are some systems and processes that just don't work in the day or nighttime. So here's what you can do. First thing you want to do is take a nap before work. So you gotta be working at 7, maybe you want to take a nap at 5 o'clock, like right before your shift starts. Go ahead and get you a little nap in, and then take naps when you can. I do know a lot of nighttime workers that on their lunch break, they use it as nap time. They take a nap. If you ever watch Grey's Anatomy, a lot of those doctors would be in the on-call rooms. Yeah. A lot of those doctors would be in the on-call rooms taking naps when they weren't doing other stuff they weren't supposed to be doing. But you get it. So they took naps when they can. So you want to take frequent naps. And then when you get off in the morning, try to put some sunglasses on as you're leaving work. This is going to delay that sunlight into your body so that your body doesn't wake up those daylight processes that you're about to go home and go to sleep. And on top of that, you want to try to avoid long commutes. So if you have to work a nighttime shift, try to work close to your job, because if you're working somewhere that's 45 minutes to an hour away, that's a long commute. So that's a lot of times to be in the daylight. And on top of that, you could be sleepy, so that could run the risk of some car accidents. So a shorter commute is probably the best so that you can get home and get to bed. You also want to have a diet that's high in fruits, vegetables, and fiber. So you want to have those wholesome foods throughout the night when you're at work eating, even throughout the day if you eat before you go to work. So having a diet that's rich in those vitamins, whole foods is going to be best for you. Because insulin, cortisol, and leptin, all those hormone signals are already all mixed up. Having a diet that is rich in those things as opposed to having those high carbs, those low glycemic or high glycemic carbohydrates that produce insulin and cause your blood sugar to go higher, those aren't going to be most effective at nighttime. So you do want to have a diet that's rich in those things. Also, we want to have a consistent 48 hours off together. So when you work in the graveyard shift, the nighttime shift, you want to have if you're working, most people that work the nighttime shift have a 4-day on and 3-day off schedule. So you want to have those consecutively so that you can have those 3 days to kind of recenter yourself. And even on your off days, you want to have a consistent sleep schedule. So daytime sleep schedule and nighttime sleep schedule need to be consistent. Another tip for this is when you get home, again, it's daylight for you, and we want to minimize that. So get you some blackout shades. Try to mimic your rooms for a nighttime so that your body can go to sleep and begin to start those nighttime processes, even though it's not nighttime. So having those dark shades, having maybe that red light therapy I spoke about earlier in the video will be good for you to set up that ambiance of sleep in your room. And of course, usually nighttime workers are living with daytime workers. So trying to get your roommates, your family, your kids, or whatever on this cycle of mom, dad, whoever needs to sleep. So that's keeping household chores, maybe just not doing it during the day and doing it once you wake up in the night, keeping noise down to a minimum just so you can really get that sleep uninterrupted. So you're going to need that 6 to 8 hours of sleep that you can get during the day. Similarly to what I mentioned about people who work the daytime shift and not being on their phones before they go to bed, this is going to apply to nighttime workers too. So once you get home, don't lay in bed on social media before you fall asleep. Get home and get to bed, because you don't want to get that blue light into your system. You want your body to start those nightly processes. And also, for companies, it's best for them to have an ambiance that signals daylight. So having those blue lights, the bright lights, having an environment that stimulates warmth and daytime so that the daytime processes can be happening while you're at work. Of course, this isn't in your control, but if you're getting, having a job interview, maybe some things that you can ask. Maybe they have somebody that's on the ergonomic team or the health and wellness team that can talk about what processes they have for the nighttime shift so that they can also have the most productive day based off of the ambiance of the hospital or the warehouse or whoever has set up for you. And lastly, you could take over-the-counter melatonin. So if you find it difficult to fall asleep, especially if you're going from someone who was working day shift and they switched to night shift, of course, it's going to take some time for your body to get adjusted to that. So taking some melatonin could help you fall asleep, since your body might not naturally be producing that, especially if you haven't set up that nighttime ambience in your bedroom. So those are some of my tips for the nighttime workers. I gave some tips for daytime people who can get their circadian rhythm back on track. And I think together we can work with this system to help it work with our health. So if you're having issues with your hormones, your stress levels, your insulin sensitivity, it could just be a simple matter of your circadian rhythm being off. So do your best to try to fix that. I hope you found this video helpful. I would love to get all nerdy and science for you, but I want to keep this video very basic so that everyone can understand it without throwing out all these technical terms that could be a little confusing to people who aren't science nerds like me. If you found this video useful, then feel free to share with someone. Go ahead and give me that like, and I'll catch you in the next video. As always, don't forget to crush it.